Welcome to Beyond Rockets. Hope you're having a great day. My name is Clark Dunn and I am your host. Get ready to enjoy some awesome conversations from Huntsville locals about cool work they are doing right here in the Rocket City. You can connect with us on social media at Beyond Rockets, and if you're interested in doing a podcast yourself, I'd love to hear from you. You can visit my website, beyondrockets.com today, or connect with me on LinkedIn at Clark Dunn. Sit back and enjoy this episode of Beyond Rockets.
Everything I liked except the way she talked to me every day.
This episode is sponsored by Yellowhammer Brewing. Yellowhammer is a local craft brewery serving Huntsville for the past 14 years. They are known for their premium craft beers like their T-Minus and Rebellion, but what you might not know is they also offer spirits, wine, seltzers, and non-alcoholic drinks. Next time you stop by their location, try one of their seasonal cocktails made with the Gemini Bourbon or the Yellowhammer Vodka, or try this year's big hit Pineapple Punch Seltzer. You can find out more information about Yellowhammer Brewery by visiting their website, yellowhammerbrewery.com, or visiting their tap room located at Campus 805. Well, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Clark.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here today. Would you like to introduce yourself and we'll get started there?
Sure. My name is Ryan Diehl. I'm the owner of Remnant Framing at Lowe Mill here in Huntsville, Alabama.
Yeah, so you've only been in Huntsville for about 2.5 years. Talk a little bit about what prompted the move to move all the way across the country, basically, and what brought you here to Huntsville.
Well, my best friend and my wife's little brother moved here for work around 2020. And we came and visited a few times, really liked it. And when the company that I worked for opened up a store out here, I took the opportunity to sell a house in California and move out here. Wow.
And so what was prior to visiting here in 2020 or so when your wife's family moved here and some of her family members moved here, did you have any preconceived knowledge of what Huntsville was, what was going on in Huntsville? Have you heard of Huntsville prior to that?
Not really. I was familiar with Space Camp. I remember growing up watching Nickelodeon and dreaming of going to Space Camp when I was a kid. And that was about it. Fast forward to when we're here, my daughter 2 years ago in 5th grade got to go and do the Space Camp trip with school. So that was kind of a really cool moment to come around to.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a little different than, because like you were in Southern California, right?
Yes.
Prior to coming here. And so, that move is big for a family. Was it tough on the family as a whole to, uproot your life in California and move to Huntsville, Alabama, or what was the transition nice?
At first everything seemed to line up. It was like something was calling us here. Honestly, it felt really, interesting.
Yeah.
And had our curiosity going. And when we moved here, my job, I worked for Trader Joe's for about 17 years. And for me, moving here was a bit easier because I had a built-in social network.
Yeah.
90 friends already at the store. And Trader Joe's is set up to where it doesn't matter where you go. If you walk in the doors, it looks like Trader Joe's. It smells like Trader Joe's. For me, it made it a lot easier to transition from California to Alabama. It took my wife and my 2 daughters a little bit longer to find their place and get comfortable with the people. But we're on track now and everything seems to be going pretty well.
Yeah. And so the framing business that you're now doing full time is something you kind of started in your garage studio in California. Talk a little bit about prior to even just starting it in California, what kind of prompted the initial idea that, hey, getting into the framing business is something that you're passionate about or interested in?
I guess I was primed to do it beforehand. You could say I come from a family of artists. My mother's a painter. There's some other painters in the family, writers, musicians. And so when an opportunity came up to purchase the framing tools from a gentleman in Oxnard, California, he was retiring and selling all his shop tools. I got to know him and he ended up selling them to me for half of what he was originally selling them for.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was really cool. He brought me in, he showed me how to use the tools for a couple weeks. And then I rented a U-Haul picked everything up and took it back home and just figured it out. After that, somebody contacted me because they had heard I started to learn how to frame. Another shop was closing down, and they had a shipping container full of molding.
Wow.
Thousands of feet of molding. It was about 10 truckloads in my dad's pickup truck. And I got it for $400.
Wow.
Yeah. So I made
all these things just kind of almost landed in your lap prior to even thinking about doing something like that. Around what year was all this happening?
About 2013.
2013. Wow.
Yeah.
So you had been doing it, 7 years or so prior to even moving here to Huntsville.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I started, like I said, out of my garage and did it for a handful of years. It was a pretty solid little side hustle for a while. Once I took on more responsibilities at Trader Joe's, I stepped out of the framing a little bit, but maintained my studio at home and continued to work on projects here and there.
Yeah. And so what was that balancing act like in the, maybe the last year or so in California with the framing and while working at Trader Joe's prior to this move to Huntsville? And did you go full time in the business once you got here to Huntsville, or were you still at Trader Joe's for a little while?
Leading up to the move, I wasn't framing much. The years leading up, the 2 or 3 years leading up to our move here, was an interesting time, right? 2020 to 2022, 2023, there's a lot going on.
Yes.
Especially at grocery store. It was a pretty chaotic place to work for a while.
Yeah.
So all of my energy was there. But once we moved here, I brought my tools, not really knowing if I was going to continue framing or not. But then I found Lowe Mill, and it just seemed like a no-brainer. So I applied for a space, and I got in and moved all of my tools in there and just started by word of mouth.
Yeah.
I had nothing but an Instagram account.
Wow.
And
so once you had the space at Lowe Mill, is that when you went full time in the business?
Not right away.
Not right away. You were still at Trader Joe's and having the space, kind of figuring out how you wanted the space to be laid out, what is the best use of the space, and probably also at the same time getting familiar with the Huntsville community and the Lowe Mill community. Yeah,
I find that building the trust that first year, especially with the artists at Lowe Mill, was probably the best thing I did. I was popping in and out on my way to and from work at Trader Joe's. I'd go home, I'd stop by Lowe Mill on my way to work.
Wow.
Hammer on some projects, go work, come back, tidy up my mess from earlier in the day, and then go home.
Wow.
And repeat that for 7 days a week for a year to get to the point where my bottleneck was time. That was my biggest bottleneck at that time. So I had to make a decision whether I wanted to take the risk and go for it or scrap everything that I had worked for.
Wow.
For a year, because it was getting to that point where I had to make a decision because it was so demanding.
So was it in 2024 that you made that decision to go and take that leap of saying, hey, the framing business is where I'm going to go all in on?
August 11th.
August 11th. Okay. So what is that? You're 5 months in to being full time. You've had the space at Lowe Mill a little bit before then.
Yeah. About a year and a half.
About a year and a half or so.
5 months.
Okay. What was that first day like once you made that decision? You knew the day at which you're going to be done at Trader Joe's. You knew the day at which you're going to be starting full time at the framing business. What was that first day like coming into the studio and knowing that this is your job?
Well, I didn't want to slow down because my pace was so fast for the last year that I was so scared of, going into a speed wobble and falling down or just losing my momentum. So I just tried to hit the ground running. my first order of business was one, maintain the projects that I had going on, but really get the space set up so that I can come here and talk to you about it, about how cool it is,
Yes.
and show everybody what's going on. It took me a few months, but actually I feel like I've gotten a lot done in those handful of months.
And I think it's always a interesting thing. I did my business and was a student full time and worked as an intern while the business was growing. And it is one of those moments that when you go full time, it is a little unsettling sometimes, because you're just like, what is it that I need to do? Because before you were running on fumes to get the things done, but you were getting them done. But then now you say, hey, I have the whole day allotted to just this. What is my time best spent doing? For me, it was like the first 6 months were just like treading water. Like I was just trying to figure out what it is to work full time in the business, what it is to go to work for myself, what is it to provide value to clients. Like all of that was just kind of a steep learning curve. I mean, it's one of those things, especially if you're in that routine of working at Trader Joe's for 17 years or so that you were there, that was very routine. And then now you kind of get this now small business entrepreneurship. It's not routine. It could be, everything changes day to day. As you've seen this growth of being full-time since about August, has most of your clientele been repeat customers, or have you seen an influx of people coming to the mill for the first time, coming upon your studio, and then, finding ways in which to work with you?
I'd say about half of my business is from the Lowe Mill community. So much of it is generated from the artists there, whether it's framing for a exhibition that they have or a piece that they've sold. That's a big part of what I do. And so my big focus right now is to put everything I have back into them. If I can raise them up, it's not just good for me and Lowe Mill and the community, it's good for everybody. So that's where my biggest focus is. Outside of that, it's been social media and people walking the mill that discover me. They'll walk by and they'll go, "Oh, a frame shop."
Yeah.
And then 3 weeks later or a month later, they come in and we have a little session with what they have.
Yeah. And I would assume too, that timing of going in full time in August led well for the summer with all the events and like the markets that they do. It probably helped with the influx of people coming to the mill that maybe don't come on a regular basis, aren't really sure what all's there, and they're able to come there for a big market, walk around, and you're able to have your door open and be welcoming to them. As you kind of wrapped up 2024, we're sitting here, the first full week of the new year. Is there a lesson learned from those 4 months of being full time that you maybe weren't aware you were going to learn or weren't prepared to do now being full time in the business?
Something that was reaffirmed to me was the issue of time. So just being there, opens up all kinds of doors. The other thing is I moved from the third floor. I was up on the third floor my first year. And now I'm down on the first floor out in the railroad rooms. And that has also been a nice increase in the quality of my work, really. And
it's a good change of scenery. I mean, because you're right near Tangled Strings. Yes. And then Pizzel's is right up I guess Pizzel's just moved, but Vertical House is on the other end. So that little spot has a, I mean, I would say most of the year that area gets the most traffic. And so I guess being on that third floor, you were kind of hidden away a little bit, but now you're kind of front and center to the public.
Yes. Yes. It's a great spot to be in, right there by the restaurants, Tangled Strings. There's a new restaurant going in next door.
Okay.
And it's an exciting place to be. I love it.
Yeah. And I think, that hitting that ground running, like you've built that momentum, and it's momentum's hard to build. And so having that momentum, being able to say, hey, I'm full time. Let's continue this momentum. Let's not let this slow down. Let's get through the summer. Let's get through the fall. Holiday season, that was probably a pretty big season for y'all. I mean, I feel like that's a big season for small businesses in general, but also people looking for pictures framed or whatever it might be. As this episode will come out right before some events that you're actually doing, talk a little bit about those events that you're happening later in January and how people can find out more information about them.
On January 25th, I'll be hosting a artist reception at my gallery at Remnant Framing, Railroad Room 3B at Lowe Mill ARTS Entertainment. The artists are Elizabeth Castro, Yuri Ozaki, and Matt Bender. Forgive me. Elizabeth Castro is a really interesting artist. She's from Uruguay and has spent time in 8 different countries with her husband, who's a automotive engineer. She's trained and produced works all over the world, including South Korea, Germany, Mexico, and more. Now her and her husband have been in Huntsville for 1 year and have she's opened up her whole collection of works to me. And that's what I'll be focusing on the next couple months, is trying to get her work out to the public. She has some really incredible stuff, and I'm really excited about it. Also, a lot of people in Huntsville know Yuri Ozaki. She's an artist that has done a lot of work around town. I have a handful of original works from her going up on January 25th as well. And then Matt Bender. I'm actually wearing one of his t-shirts right now. He's Studio 101 at Lowe Mill, and his t-shirts are all the rage. He's also a fantastic printmaker. And I've asked him to make some big winter wave prints for this gallery reception. So I hope to make it as big as possible. And I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. And that the timing of the gallery is also in time with an event happening at Tangled Strings, I think. So you're able to kind of, ride the coattail, so to speak, of what Tangled Strings is able to bring with their clientele that maybe haven't seen your stuff or wasn't aware that you're there. What are the sort of the hours of operation of the studio? When can people that are listening or watching come in, see the studio, see some of the art in the showcased artists that you were mentioning? And where's the best place just to connect with you if they're like, hey, I have a framing need, or hey, I want to schedule a meeting, or whatever that might be?
My hours of operation are Wednesday through Saturday, 11 to 6 p.m. I'm available for appointment outside of those days as well. The gallery reception on January 25th will be from 5 to 7 p.m. at Railroad Room 3. And
social media is probably the best on Instagram. I'm assuming it's probably the best point of contact.
Yeah. At Remnant Framing.
Okay. Perfect.
Everywhere, pretty much.
Awesome. And I think I was looking at y'all's Instagram earlier today. There's links to all like the website and stuff like that too. So if it's kind of the one-stop shop, go to Instagram, see some of his work, visit the links, and go all that. But we'll have all that information in the episode notes. So if anyone's listening or watching and want to find those direct links to all of Ryan's stuff, we'll have that there. But I appreciate you being here today. I think I'm excited to see this journey. We'll have to have you back on in a year or two and see how the businesses continue to grow. I challenge anyone that's listening to go out to that event on January 25th and see some local artists, see some art that's unique that maybe you haven't seen before. I like you mentioned that the one artist is opening up her collection for the first time. So she had so many pictures you were able to and art pieces you were able to sift through and find things that are unique. So I'm excited for that, but I appreciate you being here, and I continue to look forward to the success you'll have at Huntsville for years to come.
Thanks, Clark. I really appreciate you having me on.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Beyond Rockets. Don't forget you can subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen, and on YouTube at Beyond Rockets. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at Beyond Rockets to stay up to date with new episodes as they are released. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed.